Hey guys, hey, I hope the subject of this video isn't too trite for you. I think I've talked about this before, but I do want to talk about this again. There is something about having a replay that you can call your own. I'm talking about a replay in which you played every single game, right? We're not talking about one of these replays where it's like, oh, well, I used the game, I went through, I did the autoplay, right? And the computer had this happen and that happened. Or, oh, I wanted to do an experiment, so I did some crazy experiment thing and I got the answer in 5 minutes or in an hour. It depends on what game you use, how fast your computer is, right? And then you go post about it, right? I'm telling you, I've seen these things like you go onto Reddit and the guy comes up on the OOTP forum and he's like, I just replayed 130 years of baseball, ask me anything, yeah, it's entertaining for like 5 seconds, right? But that's not a replay, man. In theory it is, right? But it's not the same. Right? If you go and play through all the games just with one team, yeah, it's a project and you'll get to know the team really well. But even then, it's not the same. There's something about a replay. I'm talking about a replay where you went deep into it and you played through all the games yourself and you put time into it and you put effort and thought into it. You started getting into the old newspapers. You started getting into the way that things were. You started to know what the teams were like, getting to know their personalities. You started learning about players you didn't know about before and on and on and on. That's a replay. Right? And there's something to be said about this is my replay, this is my project, these are my teams, right? So I'll show you right here what we're looking at here. This is 1908, of course. And I've shown you these standings before. We'll just talk about this really quick, right? There's something about this replay, right? The Browns playing much better than they did in real life. And how about those Athletics who started slow and then are 9-1 in their last 10 and are tied right now for first place. The teams you expect, the Tigers in real life, were in last place at this point in time of the season. Of course, what we're not emulating here is all the poor weather that they actually had at the beginning of 1908, right? Reason why we're doing that is because we want to make sure that this replay is equitable and fair and that teams are playing an even number of games and that we don't have to do weird things like say, well, how do we handle the Merkel game? How do we handle this? How do we handle that? Because in baseball in this era, there's lots of weird stuff going on. But I tell you, this American League race has been great and it's been a little bit slow going. It's taken me longer to play this than I thought. You know how it is. You watch this. It's like 15 minutes per game. It's not that bad. I play pretty quick. When I'm off camera, I do them less than 10, right? But, I want to film as many of these games as I can because look at all these teams who are within striking range of first place. If the Highlanders end up playing really well over their heads for a while, we want to make sure we have that here and that we can share it with you, right? I want to make sure it's not something where you're reading about this, a couple of years later and you're like, boy, I kind of wish I would have seen what it was like for, Hal Chase to play well in 1908, right? If that's what's happening, we want to, call some attention to it, right? National League is a lot more predictable, the Cubs, Giants, and Pirates. I'll tell you, though, when you're really talking about a replay, you're talking about teams like the 1908 Giants, right? You look at them from every statistical viewpoint. They were the best team in the National League in 1908, and you think, how can they not win? How could they not win in this replay? How did they not win this in real life? Maybe we're not going to find the answer to that here, but at least when we play this way, we'll get to know the team a lot better, right? And the nice thing about this, of course, is that we play it our way. We play it using, the dice. So we'll go back over here to this view really quickly, right? Here are my beautiful dice, right? You see I haven't shown this very much. This is for the Strat-O-Matic fans out there, the old 20-sided. And then we have the red, white, and blue. So the APBA fans all know you use red and white, but if you like playing, replay, then you pull out the blue die, right? Or if you're playing Strat-O-Matic, then you have the white die here, you add these two together, and this is your column indicator, right? So pretty cool stuff. That's a very patriotic way of looking at this, I know. One of these days, probably many, many years into the future, at the pace that we're going to end up getting the 10-sided die, right? So we can go play Dynasty League Baseball if it lets you do your own dice rolls. I don't know if it does or not. Or we'll get a whole bunch of funky-looking dice, and then we can go play 4th Street Sports Baseball, and we'll do the same dice rolls here, and we'll have all sorts of fun with it, right? But the reason why we do this, why we want to do this by hand, is because this is my replay, right? This isn't like your replay. This isn't the computer's replay. This isn't a replay that belongs to whatever, that belongs to whoever wrote the code behind OOTP or that belonged to some sort of algorithm that one of these WAR people came up with or whatever. No, man. This is a replay where I play somebody else's game. Yeah, I didn't write the game, but, the replay itself belongs to me. All the work that's being done on the replay, all the playing of the games, all of the looking at this stuff, all the shifting around of the lineups, all the physical act of moving players from one team to the other as dictated by what happened in real life, all that stuff's on me, right? This is my replay. And that really is more than anything else. That's the thing that's the lesson that I really want to put across. right? Over the years, I haven't really gotten into this in the writing quite yet, right? And the reason why is because, there's a lot of stuff that I want to write about, a lot of interesting things to cover. And I know that a lot of you are more interested in reading about like the history of national pastime than you are in reading about whatever random thoughts I have about, whatever it is I want to talk about, war or something like that, right? I know already. I know what the stats look like and where the fans tend to come from. But there's some stuff that I really, really want to pull out, right? One of the big ones is that when we're talking about these projects, it's going to mean a lot more for you if you actually take the time to like really get into it, and if you take the time to make it your own. If you're doing this project and you're like, whatever, I don't really care, this doesn't, mean anything to me and all that stuff, and you just have the computer play most of the games, you're not going to know what happened. Yet you can go look through it and be like, oh, so-and-so threw a no-hitter, but you weren't there, you didn't experience it, you didn't play it out. I mean, it's not really your replay if it's in that sense, right? It's the replay that belongs to the computer. It's the computer that did all the work and did all the playing. You just sort of pushed a button and went forward. We haven't, like I said, we haven't gone to this point quite yet, but when you take a look at like the old APBA journal, we're going to get here eventually. We got a lot of time. We got months, right? When you take a look at the old APBA journal, especially in the 1990s, and you start looking at where autoplay came in, where micromanager became a thing and stuff, you notice that the replay culture all of a sudden changes. And all of a sudden, it's not about the experience. It's not about people talking about how, they did this crazy project that like disrupted their lives for however many years, and, their wife almost divorced them, or their wife did divorce them, like they lost their job, they got a different job, or like they moved from here to there to there to there. The replay took 15 years. You started it when you were 14 years old. You finally finished it, you're like 30, right? There are stories like that, right? They're just special types of stories. People don't do it that much these days. I know, you just have the computer play the boring games and stuff like that. Yeah, man, but then it's not yours, right? And that's the difference that you can tell when you read these other articles, these other replays that people write about. Yeah, I mean, if it's autoplay, it's cool. You can like put it through quickly and you come up with the answer, right? And you're like, oh, check it out. Maybe there's a problem with like the way that the game company configured this season or that season or whatever. Yeah, I mean, I get it, right? You want to do like a scientific thing, as scientific as you can be playing one of these tabletop games and come up with some sort of like amazing like conclusion and all that stuff. But man, it's not your replay if you're doing that. If you're just going to throw out, whatever and sort of see what happens, that's not your replay. You're just pushing a button and coming up with an answer. I mean, it's different. It's totally different from what we're talking about, man. We want to talk about the real art of doing the replay, getting deep into it, getting into the culture, playing around with a lot of this stuff, having your kids behind you when you're, filming this game once again, and you're playing some random game in like June, and you're like, there's like 5 people who are going to watch the video and you don't care because you love doing it. That's what we're talking about with the replay, right? We're still at the early stages of both of these replays, right? We're still in May. Just wait. Once we get to the dog days of summer, once it's like July and you're like, I can't believe the Phillies are playing the Cubs again in 1949. Like, I got to really play this game off camera. That's when this is going to become fun. It's going to become interesting because that's when the real character of the replay starts to come out, right? The truth is, when you're replaying a season, it's not so much about looking at the star players and looking at like will DiMaggio hit, in 56 straight and 41? Will Williams hit 407? And all that stuff, or will Ruth hit 60 home runs in 1927, or, will Maris hit 61 in 1961? All that other stuff that you normally think about, yeah, that's going to be part of it. But the truth is that when you really play a replay and you get into this, you start making friends with some of these guys, and especially the guys who are like unsung players you never heard of before. That's where the replay really comes in. You're going to spend a little bit of time playing with the stars, but you'll spend a lot of time playing with these guys who nobody's ever heard of, and suddenly they're going to become like your secret historical friend, and I don't know, man, it's pretty cool. There's nothing out there quite like it. There's no other thing in all of computing that I know of that's quite like this and that has this sort of impact. Sort of like when you play Football Manager, right? You get to know the new gens really well and you start to really care about these guys. So it is with this, except they're real people, they're real historical figures. And you're like, yeah, well, I don't know, Matt Batts, right? I mean, he was okay in 48, had an all right season in 49. But after you play with him for a while, you're like, dude, Matt Batts, I feel like I know what this guy is like, right? Yeah, maybe I don't want to start him every game, But, I do feel like the guy got kind of the short end of the stick, right? In life. I feel like maybe he could have been a little bit more if he could have started the game a little bit, or started a few more games. You read about his life, you get to know about him, and you're like, yeah, this guy's pretty cool. Or Harry Patty, right? Remember him, 1908 Brooklyn Superbas, right? Learn more about this guy, and you think, man, this guy was kind of a speed merchant, and probably could have done a lot better in the major leagues if he wasn't playing the game in a cloud of smoke all the time, right? I mean, you learn about stuff like that, and you start learning about what the game was really like back then and some of the difficulties these guys had. It doesn't just increase your appreciation for baseball, it helps you get into history. It's a different form of history, different form of getting into it. This is different than just reading a book. This is living it, and that's what the replay really is, and that's the fun of it. Anyway, there you go. Sorry again for the ramble. I will talk with you again tomorrow. Bye-bye.